They looked like sunshine. 4 people, 2 perfect couples, smiling their way through glittering stages and golden melodies. ABBA, the very definition of joy. But behind those smiles was a machine. A corporation built to keep the music playing even as 2 marriages quietly crumbled. And when those relationships finally shattered, the band didn't walk away. They recorded their biggest and most heartbreaking songs. Why? Because they couldn't walk away. They were locked inside a financial system so tight, so cleverly constructed, that even love itself became a business asset. To understand the trap, you have to meet the man who engineered it, Stig Anderson. Stig wasn't just a manager. He was the architect behind the entire ABBA empire. His plan wasn't about albums or catchy hooks. He built an economic ecosystem, Polar Music, a closed universe containing a record label, music publishing, a concert agency, merchandising, every possible income stream flowing into one place, one structure, one set of hands. And in 1970 Sweden, where taxes could reach over 80%, Stig designed Polar Music to keep every earned coin circulating inside the system, never leaving, never escaping. That also meant ABBA couldn't escape. They signed contracts that handed Anderson near total control over their music, and even more dangerously, their image. They were young, hopeful, unaware. They were binding themselves to a corporation that would eventually own their future. And then came 1974, Eurovision, Waterloo, their global key, the moment the engine roared into full speed. Overnight, ABBA became a brand, an international asset whose value skyrocketed with every tour, every record, every t-shirt. They weren't just 4 musicians anymore. They were the product at the heart of Stig Anderson's financial machine. And Stig knew exactly what he was selling. Not just songs, a fantasy. 2 happy couples making sunny music together. Every interview had a script. Every photo had an angle. Every journalist was handed a story to repeat. The perfect ABBA family image wasn't an accident. It was a business model. And for a while, it worked. Until the illusion broke. The first crack came at the end of 1958. Agneta walked out of the home she shared with Björn. Their marriage, half of ABBA's public identity, was finished. The official announcement in January 1979 softened the blow with cheerful PR language insisting nothing would change. But everything changed. There was no break, no time to breathe, grieve, or heal. The machine demanded new music, and the corporation didn't tolerate downtime. So 2 people who had just ended an 8-year relationship were forced back into the studio to create Voulez-Vous, a project coated in disco gloss while their personal world fell apart. And the emotional exploitation didn't end there. A year later, during Super Trooper, Björn, drunk on a bottle of brandy and heartbreak, wrote The Winner Takes It All, a confession, a wound turned into lyrics. The next morning, he handed those lyrics to the woman the song was about. "Can you sing this?" And astonishingly, she said yes. Agneta later said she cried in the studio. She needed support. She needed wine. She was singing her own pain with the man who had caused it, standing just meters away. The world heard a beautiful ballad. She lived a tragedy. And when the song became an international hit, topping charts everywhere, the heartbreak of a broken couple turned into millions for Polar Music. 4 people smiling under spotlights. 2 marriages in ruins. 1 machine that kept running no matter who got hurt. ABBA gave the world joy, but behind the curtain, they paid the price. The engine driving ABBA's unstoppable success was fueled more than talent. It ran on the private tragedies of its members. At the very moment Agnetta's personal life was collapsing, she faced another nightmare that would turn her work into sheer torment. On October 3, 1979, during a U.S. tour, the band's private jet from New York to Boston was swallowed by a violent storm. Turbulence shook the plane like a toy, and reports claimed it had flown dangerously close to a tornado. For Agnetta, every second felt like the end. When the pilot finally managed an emergency landing, she was certain she would die. From that moment on, flying became a living nightmare, a panic so severe that every future flight was pure torture. This fear didn't stop the ABBA machine. International tours, TV appearances, global promotions all had to continue. Agnetta's fear was treated as a minor inconvenience, a logistical headache, not a human crisis it truly was. On tours like the one to Japan in 1980, she endured long journeys by ship and train, while the rest of the band flew, leaving her isolated and utterly exhausted. Her suffering was invisible to the system that had built itself on precision, control, and relentless forward motion. Divorce had already shaken the band once, and another could have ended it for good. But at Polar Music, business always came first. Cold efficiency ruled, and personal pain was a price to be paid quietly. In February 1981, just 2 years after the first divorce, Benny Anderson and Annie Fried Lyngstad announced their own separation, another storm in a band already weathering far too many. The illusion was over. The perfect image of happy couples, ABBA's golden marketing tool, was shattered forever. The band that had sold the world a dream of love and harmony now consisted of two divorced couples forced to work together. In that moment, ABBA, as an idea, was dead. The cracks were impossible to hide during the recording of The Visitors in 1981. Bjorn and Benny arrived early, buried in songs and arrangements, while Agnetta and Annie Fried came later just to record their vocals. No shared meals, no laughter, no sense of togetherness. Work became cold and mechanical, a purely professional grind aimed only at meeting deadlines. The happy ABBA family existed only on the covers of old albums. The lyrics turned into a diary of heartbreak. When All Is Said and Done was a direct reply to The Winner Takes It All. This time, Annie Fried had to sing about the end of her relationship with Benny. The single became the band's final global hit. It was a song of loneliness and sorrow, mirroring the inner turmoil of all four members. Fans, now aware of both divorces, weren't just listening to music. They were hearing confessions laid bare. Music stopped being an escape. It became a mirror of harsh reality. Public performances and music videos looked stiff, awkward. The physical distance, the total lack of chemistry were obvious. During their last live TV performance on the Late Late Breakfast Show in December 1982, they sat far apart, avoided eye contact, and forced smiles hid the tension between them. Behind the glittering smile of ABBA, something dark was brewing. In the music video for Undertake, the band members appear alone, isolated in their own lonely worlds. A haunting image of a group that had stopped being a team. By the end of 1982, ABBA announced they were taking a break, but there was no sugarcoating it. The dream of love and harmony had collapsed. Officially, they wanted to focus on solo projects. The truth? It was an admission of failure. While personal relationships crumbled, Stig Anderson's financial machine was running at full throttle, turning their fame and their misery into a money-making empire. Ruthless and brilliant, the system extracted wealth from the very people creating it. In 1970s and 1980s Sweden, the highest tax rate exceeded 80%, making huge direct salaries nearly impossible. Anderson had a solution. Instead of paying the band directly, he reinvested their profits into a sprawling network of companies under Polar Music. Officially, it protected their money from taxes. In reality, it trapped them in a labyrinth of finances where they lost control over their own income. ABBA's fortune was scattered across art galleries, real estate, sports equipment, and even an oil trading company called Pol Oil. On paper, they were millionaires. In practice, their wealth was frozen, out of reach. At the center of it all was Stig, wielding control through a copyright system called split copyright. By contributing just a few words or suggesting song titles, he was officially listed as co-author of hits like Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, and Fernando. This allowed him and his publishing company, Sweden Music, to claim enormous royalties, often matching the shares of Benny and Bjorn, the band's true composers. ABBA's music brought joy to millions, but behind the hits, the story was one of isolation, manipulation, and a fortune the creators could barely touch. What if the man you trusted most was quietly taking the same money you earned from your own work? For ABBA, that nightmare was real. Stig Anderson, their manager and almost a father figure, was making as much from their music as they were. For years, the band accepted his complicated financial reports, believing he had their best interests at heart. But after ABBA broke up in the late 1980s, the calm after the storm brought questions and shocking answers. They commissioned an independent audit of Polar Music, and what they discovered was staggering. Millions of dollars had been misreported, shuffled between companies, or simply vanished. The money never made it to the band. The final blow came in 1989 when Polar Music was sold to Polygram for an estimated 300 million Swedish krona. Anderson walked away with a fortune built on ABBA's talent, leaving the band realizing just how much of their past earnings had been withheld. By June 1990, patience ran out. Agneta, Benny and Bjorn, through their company Harlequin, filed an official police report in Stockholm accusing Stig Anderson of committing a crime. The betrayal that had been hidden behind smiles and stage lights was finally exposed. The shock hit like a thunderbolt. Stig Anderson, the man who had made ABBA rich, was accused of embezzlement, with demands to return a staggering 25 million kroner. The allegations weren't just whispers, they were public, plastered across newspapers, shattering the perfect image of the ABBA family. Naturally, Anderson denied everything, claiming he had been their financial hero. But the auditor's evidence was impossible to ignore. To avoid a long, messy, and potentially devastating court battle, both sides chose an out-of-court settlement. Anderson was forced to pay compensation. The full details were never revealed, but it's known that the payout to the company Harlequin gave Agneta, Benny, and Bjorn roughly 5 million Swedish kroner each. Annifrid, who had sold her shares earlier, stayed out of the lawsuit. What remained for the others was their legacy, but even that soon became a business product. In 2000, an offer emerged that showed the true scale of their impact. 1 billion kroner for a series of 100 concerts. The world begged for their comeback, but they refused. The pain ran too deep to reunite on stage. Yet a brilliant solution appeared, the musical Mamma Mia. It was a masterstroke. ABBA's name earned hundreds of millions without any of the members stepping back into the spotlight. The band may have left the stage, but their empire was stronger than ever. Imagine your favorite songs coming to life not through the tired voices of aging artists, but through flawless, eternal versions of them, performing endlessly without a hint of fatigue or heartbreak. That's exactly what happened. Fans got the music they loved, wrapped in fresh, carefree narratives, while the real creators could finally retreat from their messy pasts. It was the first step in a radical separation, the product now untethered from the people who made it. But the real game changer arrived in 2021 with the Voyage project. entered the avatars, hyper-realistic digital avatars of the ABBA members as they were in 1979. These virtual performers could sing 7 days a week, never age, never complain, and never feel the sting of personal tragedy. The ABBA brand had become something more than human, a self-sustaining machine. The real artists, once living, breathing people with flaws, fears, and memories, were replaced by data. Their performances were now flawlessly programmed algorithms. Perfect, immortal workers, untouchable by conflict, exhaustion, or heartbreak. The music lived on, the legends remained, and yet the humans who had created it could finally fade into the background. Ghosts of their own myth.